Hey friends, I want to talk today about something that I have struggled with since I was a teenager, and I know that many of you also deal with this too. And I just want to chat a little bit about it and give you some tips on ways to work with it, and that is fibrocystic breasts. So, in the kind of allopathic Western medical tradition, it's actually known as fibrocystic breast disease. You can call it a disease or not. I think it is really common though, and is something that is often an indication that things aren't flowing or working or balanced inside the body. So fibrocystic breasts are basically, breast tissue that gets lumpy, bumpy, tender, and swollen, that isn't related to like breast cancer or pathology in any way. And most of the time it's cyclical, right? It's like, for me, it's like that week coming up to my period, my breasts will get very big and tender and painful and lumpy. And like I said, I've had this since I was a teenager and like never really thought to address it. A lot of us, especially like in female bodies, we've been kind of conditioned to think that all these things are normal and natural and it's just kind of what to be expected. But the more that I have dove into my own healing journey and my herbalist training and all this other things, it's like, this isn't actually like normal or natural. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. So I wanted to chat a little bit about fibrocystic breasts. And, it can be on a spectrum like everything else. You can get a little tiny bit of bumpiness or swelling, or it can be extreme and really big and painful, and interfere with your day-to-day life. So when we think about the structure of the breast, right, whether you've had kids or not, whether you've breastfed or not, whether you've had any kind of, disease or anything of the breast, it's basically a lot of fat tissue, with some milk ducts and a lot of lymphatic drainage, a lot of lymph glands and nodes around the breast and the armpit. So for me, thinking of just from an anatomical point of view, the lymphatic system is going to be really, really important with fibrocystic breast disease. I think personally, and this is my opinion, that we get this lumpiness and tenderness because the lymph is not draining properly through this area. And let's be honest, in today's world, most of our lymphatic systems aren't working very well. So this is probably one of the reasons why it's so common. Lymph tends to like back up and get stuck. So we have a lot of glands like in the armpit, the side of the breast, and like around the front, around the sternum. So it kind of affects the whole area around the breast. For me, it's mostly on the outside. It may be in a different pattern. So working with the lymph, and while we're on the subject, because of the lymph nodes and glands in the armpits, I will make a note that it's so important to switch to a natural deodorant. This is key, especially if you want to take care of your lymphatic system, to avoid things like breast cancer. Getting rid of the conventional, toxic deodorants and switching to a natural deodorant. Just gonna put that out there before I forget. That's important. And for the lymph, like there's so many things that we can do for the lymph. And it's way too much to go into in this video. Maybe I'll make another video just about that. And I did make a blog about it too, if you're curious. Different, foods, especially fruits, high vibration, hydrating, fresh, raw foods can help hydrate and move the lymphatic system. There are lots of herbs, lymphatic herbs out there, and that's something that I can help you with personally, kind of creating your own like herbal strategy to help with fibrocystic breasts. And lastly is just physical movement. So, exercising and movement, yoga, things that kind of stretch and move the chest are going to be great. But also doing your breast massage is going to be really important too. And I'm sure you've heard this already. And I'm not talking about just like a clinical lump check, because when you have fibrocystic breasts, everything's going to feel lumpy. And I don't want you to get concerned. Yes, it's good to do your lump checks and get anything checked out that's suspicious. But for most of us with fibrocystic breast disease, it's going to get lumpy and tender, and then it's going to go away. Like, this is part of the hormonal cycle. But anyway, like, breast massage is a wonderful self-care practice anyway, and it's a wonderful way to introduce, herbs and essential oils into this area. So for me, I have my own like breast massage blend that I've made. I think I shared the recipe on Instagram at some point too, so you can go and try to find that. And just taking 5 or 10 minutes, it doesn't need to be a long like ritual or anything, just lovingly, tenderly rubbing this oil or whatever you have into the breast tissue. And this can help move the lymph as well, just to kind of physically, because our lymph system doesn't have pumps like the cardiovascular system does, so we have to manually move it. So that is key as well. And when we besides the lymphatic system, the hormonal system, like the endocrine system, is going to be important as well, because this is cyclical for most of us. So that means we have hormonal mediation. And because the breast tissue is primarily fat, and fat is estrogenic, it is very susceptible to changes in hormones. So being able to balance your hormones, working with a practitioner that can help you identify things like estrogen dominance versus progesterone dominance, balancing these two hormones regardless of where you are in your cycle, checking your diet for any hormones that you may be taking in. That's usually from animal products. All these things are pretty key when you're thinking about fibrocystic breasts. You want to address the endocrine system. And for a lot of us, because of the world we live in, stress and body fat that's holding a lot of toxins and endocrine disruptor toxins in the environment, all these things can disrupt the hormones of the body and can result in a symptom like fibrocystic breasts. So again, that's something that you can work with me on, or work with another qualified practitioner to help you understand your hormones and your cycle. And there are herbs and foods and things that you can incorporate to help balance that out. For me, it was a big change when I changed my diet and I brought in a few herbs for my endocrine system. And now my fibrocystic breasts are almost gone. I won't say they're gone totally, and that depends on a few other lifestyle factors, which I'll get to in just a second. But they are incredibly way better than they used to be. Like, during my worst months, I would have to wear a completely different bra for a week out of the month because my breasts were so big and heavy and painful. It was awful, and I just did not want to be touched, and everything, like if I bumped into something, it was just like excruciating pain. So for me, once it got to that point, I was like, okay, this is legit an issue that needs to be addressed. So if you're at that point, or even if you're not at that point and you just notice that things get pumpy and swollen a certain time of the month, then it's great to address it now before it gets worse potentially. And lastly, I just wanted to address a couple other factors that can affect the breast tissue and result in things like fibrocystic breasts. And the number one thing is caffeine. This is huge one. So there is quite a lot of research out there about caffeine intake and breast tissue and fibrocystic breast disease. So if you're curious, you can go and look up some of those, research studies. But essentially, the more caffeine you take in, the worse the fibrocystic breasts are going to be. So I know it's not fun, and it's probably not what you want to hear if you're a caffeine addict or a coffee addict like I used to be. Oh my gosh, like 2 or 3 cups of bulletproof coffee every day. My fibrocystic breast disease was out of control, and I didn't really put it together till later. So cutting down on the caffeine, eliminating it completely for a cycle or 2 if you can, that can make a really big difference. And there are some great alternatives, herbal, kind of herbal coffees or coffee alternatives, if you're a coffee drinker. So there are other options to make it less miserable. And there are other things too to help you get that natural energy without the caffeine. That again is kind of a topic for a whole nother video. But again, caffeine is really important to work with, to eliminate, to cut down on with fibrocystic breast disease. And of course, like lots of other kind of basic lifestyle factors that I'm sure you guys know, getting enough sleep, making sure you're getting some downtime. Also thinking about the kinds of clothing or bras that you're wearing around the breast tissue. For example, like the really, kind of fancy tight underwire bras are terrible for your breasts. It really constricts the flow of lymph, of fluid, of blood, of everything into this tissue. So making sure you give the girls time to breathe and move around. And I think that's all I can think of that I wanted to share. Again, this is one of those topics in women's health, or people with breasts, not just women, that deal with this. Is something that I can work with you on to create, a holistic plan to help, again, balance your hormones, clean up your lymphatic system, and get things moving through here again. Because really, when you think about the lumpy, bumpy, tender, swelling, it's really just an indication of stagnation. So when we get things moving and get things balanced, then you'll feel so much better. So again, I just wanted to share this for you today about fibrocystic breast, because this is something that I have dealt with, and it's been a real pain, quite literally, in my life. And it's so much better now. So I know that it can be healed, it can be reversed, it can be worked with. So if you suffer from this, or if you have any questions about fibrocystic breast, drop me a comment below. And if you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'll be making lots more health and spirituality videos to come, so stay tuned. But in the meantime, everyone, take good care, and I'll see you next time. Bye!